Chapter 4. Welcome to Earth, the insane asylum of the universe.
I used to worry about people. Now I don't care anymore. We're all just waiting here, killing time before we expire. Dixie slapped himself a few times to snap out of it. Yeah, that's the spirit, moron, he chided to himself as he walked. He had tried starting his car this morning, but the thing wouldn't even make a peep. With no ride available, he found himself playing with his backpack while on his way to meet Chili Sue at the Spoiled Sport. This time they were going to get some real work done. This time for real. Honest, Dixie said to himself. They had gone there last night, actually, to study. But after bumping into the Babayan brothers, they'd squandered the time talking about the spook sightings by Hadwin and Howe Street in downtown Kankankerville. 16 unaccounted robberies, including another stolen pie off of a windowsill. All reported within 1/2 hour. And then mulling over this, when he got home, Dixie had found this a perfect excuse for not studying for the exam. Unfortunately, even this whole morning was squandered. Instead of picking up his math book, Dixie couldn't resist reliving other scenes in his mind. He liked to call it meditating. His parents called it avoiding responsibility. Last night at the Spoiled Sport, Chili had been glummer than normal. After confessing to her how watching the animatronic singing dogs at the food court was the main reason why he still liked going to the Topo Gigio's amusement center, she suddenly started tearing up. Breaking down about the pressure her family was putting on her had been hard to watch. Supply and demand. My dad's saying to me, and he won't shut up, she had told him. As if it was all so simple. Supply and demand for things that people want in terms of some fix, than things that's for their own good. I'm good at what I do. Trying to fix society is thankless work. And then her heavy-handedness had gotten worse once the Babayan brothers had left. What do you do when other people's choices rob you of the ideal? She asked him bluntly. Dixie could still see Chili's face in his mind, full of despair. As a social worker, she was not making the coin needed to get an affordable apartment in this booming market around them with the real estate going up. Rent increases had tripled in the last 3 years for some dumb reason again. And for that, Chili knew she couldn't ever move out of her house unless she got a higher paying degree or 2 more friends besides Dixie to help with rent. I already know what I want to do, she had reminded him. My dad dismisses me, Dixie. Like I'm a naive idiot. So self-righteous, his stupid grin while I try to explain it to him, while he picks up the nativity scene on the front lawn. It all feels like it's mocking me. It's almost April. Why do you guys leave that thing up for so long anyway? He remembered asking her. And then she had said something that really rocked that simpler view of the world of his. What if God gave you a talent that doesn't pay the bills? What then? He doesn't have an answer for that one. He wished he hadn't been raised in a religious family of his own with no real soul. Don't fall into the trap, Dixie's mind willed to his best friend telepathically as he kept walking. Strength and strength. No complaining. After all, what if he and Chili had lived in an NWO country instead? One of those countries that after the second flood had really gone Orwellian. It could have all been so much different for them growing up. Living under a strange mix of socialism run by technocrats and AI governments in one of those places. Some had loved it. Most wished they could escape. So I'm basically fated to exist misunderstood, Chili's recent voice continued in his memory. Considered a slacker because I don't want to go to college. Unsupported by family that is intimidated by their view of economic reality. Her frustrations had been unsettling, mainly because they were hitting home pretty bad. I'm going against the grain, dude, she had gone on. What if your natural passion does not allow you to barely survive? Does God ever favor anything? I can't live in a world like that. Dixie kicked a rock down the road as he started walking past the bagel district. It was a series of independent bakeries in Kankankerville that served the best powder cookies and rhubarb pie money could buy. Sadly, there was never enough seating there to hang out long enough due to the social distancing practices that were being utilized there. Most of the bakeries in Kankankerville were old school. I'm not a professional victim no matter what Uncle Frank says, Chili had been insisting. She wished she had the money, or the drive, or the understanding, or the connections for that matter, to escape her confusion. She wasn't a full have-not, but her family just didn't give her space for sympathy with any of her ponderings. They just tried to get her to shape up and take her to a state-run therapist that had made things worse. And they said she whined too much and verbally beat her down for questioning reality. Dixie could relate to Chili so well, and right now it made him even glummer. All she really wanted to do was escape this life. If not this life, then at least this cycle. She would constantly ask him, does the universe even give a so-called have-not, or even a half-have-not, a chance? He agreed with everything his best friend was saying, but there was nothing he or her could do about it. Observing the swirling clouds in the distance to the north as he passed 1999 Street, it seemed as if the weather enjoyed reflecting his own moods lately. He smiled grimly. What if she was right? What if the end game in joining what she called that rat race was destruction anyway? It hadn't worked so perfectly before when his parents were young, and it didn't feel satisfying now. Damn it! You were doing so much better today, kid. Don't forget that, he said out loud to himself, and then telepathically again to Chili, as if she was right there with him. Maybe he shouldn't tell her more about his own problems. Maybe they should just, who knows. What a week. His recent car accident, the strange visions, and now officially getting fired. Before this week, he had been doing more or less relatively well. And just like Chili would say, one positive stride forward and then something pulls you back in. Was it too much to ask to have a whole season of bliss in and out? It was supposed to be a great spring. And then there's that damn math exam, Dixie thought out loud. Actually, he thought how maybe today she must be doing better than he was. It was always something. Either he was having a good day and she was down, or the other way around. Why can't luck ever be even, he wondered. And then he snorted to himself. I'm falling into the trap again. Slapping his face a few times, he realized that perhaps it might be better to snap out of this rut. The Spoiled Sport was a local cafe located on Dandervie Street, where a lot of students from the Torturia district in Kankerville like to hang out. It was not one of those old-school shops with strict social distancing measures. Here, goofy guys like to watch sports and unsuccessfully try to pick up girls. With its free Wi-Fi, cheap drinks, and holographic video game arcade in the back room, the place was always packed. And due to the tiny surface area inside the cafe itself, seating there was so compact that Dixie described it as the only restaurant in the city with great coffee and where it was socially acceptable that your face was quote-unquote inches away from someone's ass. Every table was filled when he got there, either because of some loner taking up the whole table, or some other goober wearing giant headphones and listening to music on their computer even though there was always a live performer, or because of a group sitting around a table and looking into the hollow depths of their gyrotar smartphones. Luckily, Dixie and Chili Sue found a booth and they settled into their typical banter for a few minutes. What's that you got in your hand? She asked him. I think it's a chick track, he replied as he showed her the comic he found and displayed to her its title. God's in Control, it says. Sure. Dixie shrugged as he left the track on the cushion of his seat for some other person to do something with it. Not in this place, he's not. Please don't bring up my dad right now, said Chili. Hey, I agree with you, said Dixie. If there was a God, how come he's forsaken this entire wasteland? Jeremiah 9:23, said a man walking by their booth with a thumbs up. Great. It was Pastor Martin, head of Jeremiah's Hostel, a local charity organization helping the homeless in Kankerville. Chili had to smirk. You really do have bad timing. They continued to engage in banter before Dixie remembered his main purpose here and searched his backpack frantically. Oh shoot, I forgot it, he yelled loudly. You let yourself be willfully oblivious, Chili noted. Don't act like you didn't try to check to see if it was there when you left. Launching himself from his seat, Dixie practically ran towards the door. Wait, Chili Sue yelled after him. Dixie froze mid-run, his hand on the back of someone's chair, his waist caught between two others. His shoulders were up by his ears, a side effect of sucking in his pudgy stomach. He looked back at Chili, a pained expression of guilt on his face. Chili was very aware that his sudden escape and her shout had gained the attention of most of the cafe. If it's the algebra book, don't bother. I forgot mine too, and my notes. Dixie let out a sigh and lowered his shoulders. He half grinned while walking slowly to the table and sliding back in the booth. The restaurant patrons resumed their own entertainment. We're gonna fail. Dixie looked across at Chili Sue, who was trying to pay a lot of attention to the menu. Well, we're not gonna win any most likely to be a mathematician awards, Chili said without looking up. I just don't have it in me right now to feel guilty. Look, new menu design. Dixie stared at the menu for a moment but didn't read anything. I wonder if it's possible for yearbooks to issue apologies, he said after a while. What do you mean? Asked Chili. And what does that have to do with anything? You know, said Dixie. After somebody who was voted most likely to succeed turns out to be a tyrannical psychopath, like Rasputin or Genghis Khan. Where do you come up with this stuff? Asked Chili, shaking her head at the menu. A few wisps of hair fell down from her bangs, obscuring her eyes from view. Think about it for a minute, said Dixie. High school yearbooks back then. If the committee had voted Stalin or Hitler as most likely to succeed, and they picked either of them, and then after World War II, they were like, oh shit, we got to reprint our old high school yearbooks because we don't want to be hounded out as National Socialists or commies or something. You always say pretty odd stuff, but lately it's been getting really weird. Chili glanced up through her curtain of hair. She was about to ask Dixie more about his visions he had been having, but at that moment, a young man's voice called out from across the cafe. Hey, Dixie. It was Guffin Postlethwaite. He stood in the doorway of the cafe with a giant smile painted on his face. Behind him was Steve Pistol and Stacy Grimm, classmates of theirs since high school. Guffin also happened to be in Professor Existi's algebra class at Torturia Community College. Dixie groaned. Guffin had been bothering Dixie to join an online league for some sports game that he couldn't care less about, and Stacy only ever felt like talking if it had to do with selling her new agey essential oils product. It wouldn't have been a big deal had it not been for the fact that he mistook her friendliness to sell oils as sincere flirtation. The three shuffled into the cafe, approaching the booth. Dixie and Chili glanced at each other and rolled their eyes as more and more people packed into the cafe until the place felt like it was an overpopulated rock concert taking place in a submarine. Mind if we sit? Guffin asked, but the gestures on his face seemed to request more out of desperation, that there was nowhere else to sit, and sit with them out of enjoyment. He didn't wait for an answer as he slid in next to Chili Sue, who looked annoyed. What are you guys up to? Chili asked politely, although part of her hated feeling like such a pretentious twit herself. We were about to order, Stacy said, and then I guess homework. Actually, we were ignoring the fact we have the algebra exam Friday, Dixie supplied cautiously. More and more people packed into the spoiled sport. The air in here was starting to get so thick that the actual acoustics of this place were starting to bounce off the walls. Or maybe it was Dixie's own head, swimming and playing tricks on him. He felt a sudden anxiety attack. His ears felt hollow. A quick blink of the eyes and a flash of some guys all of a sudden fighting against these strange rock-like blobs, and he came back to consciousness. Again? Dixie could hear Guffin saying to him, even though Guffin seemed indifferent to whatever pale facial expression Dixie might have had on his face for the moment. Chili grimaced. You're always about to bomb your math exams, Guffin went on. Just to know the class. Well, replied Chili Sue, looking directly at Guffin, are you ready for it? Absolutely not, he replied with a shrug. But when the hell am I going to use math? I'm majoring in ice hockey history studies. That's a sanctioned major? Asked Dixie. I had no idea. Guffin appeared to love his major and went on to talk about several projects he had been working on with a local blade manufacturing firm for an internship, despite the fact Chili and Dixie had not asked him any questions about it. Unpaid internship, of course. It was nice to hear how happy he was about how things were going for him, though. But Guffin's flaunting about his success was somewhat cavalier in comparison to Dixie's current job problems. Apparently, word about Dixie getting fired had spread around fast. Chili rubbed her face. Wasn't it you that was looking for reasonable rent? Guffin went on to remind her. You guys just gotta look harder. There's jobs out there if you like. Yeah, like yours, I guess, muttered Dixie. Okay, so you make blades all day. That's awesome, he said sarcastically. My older brother's best advice to me. Do what you like and follow that and get paid, Guffin replied. But you want to be a pro hockey player, Dixie considered. Coach, Guffin corrected him. Let's be realistic. Well, my cousin Denny's been studying economic trends for his thesis, Dixie considered slowly. What's your point? Asked Guffin. Well, it seems the job market's saturated, Dixie reasoned. So is everything else if you haven't noticed. What if you can't get on a pro hockey team? Or teach? Guffin suddenly drew a blank stare with a temporary look of disillusionment, as if the idea had never really occurred to him before. It was plain that Dixie had brought up a touchy subject. I'm sorry, man, said Dixie. Didn't mean to make it. What the hell are you talking about? Guffin cut him off. Anyway, lighten up. Dixie would have laughed at the whole irony of it all, had his head not suddenly blinked a few times with another strange vision in his brain. Hallucination, really, but he was afraid to show any emotion. Suddenly, it sounded like the room was underwater. You guys been watching the new series? It's on Office Box. You know, The Floater? He could hear Guffin ask him in Chile. Haven't seen it yet, Chili Sue had to admit with complete disinterest. What's it about? It just sounded like a bad action movie. Well, that's actually what I was going to tell you you've been up to, said Guffin. Just wanted to bring some pleasant news about it before you two had to get all philosophical. I didn't do that, protested Dixie. I was just... Anyway, it's good, Guffin announced with approval. Just binge-watched the entire first season this week. It's not bad, actually, put in Stacy. Apparently, it was about some guy who found out he had a floater in his eye. Yeah. And then it causes all sorts of things to happen to him, she added. I just saw one episode. Dixie tried to chime in pitifully. It just sounded like some weird sci-fi. Before I watched it, I pictured a guy stranded out in space trying to figure out how to survive and get around. No, it's way better than that, Guffin explained excitedly. It's about a disgruntled ophthalmologist who finds redemption in switching his profession to podiatry, but the burden of his unending school loans caused him to go crazy. Solid stuff I can relate to, said Dixie. Hope that doesn't happen to me. He made a gesture to Guffin not to bring up school loans as he nodded towards Chili. God damn it, everything triggers you guys, Guffin replied rather callously. Relax a bit, will you? You go to a community college and not med school, Stacy reminded Guffin. As Dixie and Chili grew more uncomfortable, Stacy and Guffin started babbling on to each other about the current crisis again in higher education. My mom was even saying it, Stacy went on. Could you imagine near Civil War again, where everybody with massive loans started attacking everybody lucky enough not getting suckered into college again? Chili stared anxiously out the window. Why didn't her and Dixie just go to the woods today? She could hear Guffin snort. Yeah, would you really want to live to see stuff like that again? Unfortunately, the idea of reality combined with the upcoming exam triggered stress in Chili's mind. And right now, she wasn't feeling that inner strength. That show sounds stupid. I'm too busy to watch it anyways, Chili Sue replied disgruntled after a while, gesturing to excuse herself and causing Guffin to grin. Whoa, Ice Queen. I thought you liked thinking about stuff like this. Didn't mean to disturb you. Guffin raised his hands to his chest, fingers outstretched, looking like he was shielding himself from her gaze. Steve sat by, ignoring the whole situation. He had been on his Gyrotar smartphone the entire time. Chili said nothing, but the scene was getting awkward. Don't worry. Relax. We'll get going, Guffin said, breaking the silence. Whatever. We just wanted the table, he confessed with a laugh. The three of them got up from the booth and headed outside. As Guffin opened the door, he stopped and pointed back at Chili and Dixie. See you guys later. Watch the damn series. Well, that's great, Dixie chuckled. You scared them off. They're not so bad. Come on, you don't really like them. You're just saying that because you still want to believe Stacy actually likes you, Chili pointed out. She's just trying to sell those bottles of oil. Besides, Guffin's always spaced out. Sometimes I wish I was as big an airhead as him, That's the most maddening part, said Dixie.